on the radio.
Mr. Horowitz, I want to come back to something we talked about earlier, the disclosure of FBI Attorney 1 and FBI Attorney 2. And you said, I think I'm correct, that they did not want that divulged because they actually worked in counterintelligence. Is that correct?
That's what we were told by the FBI.
Okay, but you know who the people are.
Correct.
And I would say, based on your report, I know who they are. And what I guess I'm concerned about is, you know that they don't work for the counterintelligence division.
Well, two of the agents do.
I'm talking about the attorneys.
There's one lawyer who's in here. So there are 5 people total.
Right.
Page Strzok, 2 other agents.
So you had a dialogue between FBI Attorney 1 and 2.
Correct.
And those 2 attorneys, do they not work for Trish Anderson?
Those 2 attorneys work in the Office of General Counsel.
Yeah. And so would one of those attorneys be Sally Moyer?
I'm going to defer to what the...
But they don't work in counterintelligence. I mean, if that's the reason the FBI is giving, they're giving you false information because they work for the General Counsel.
They were talking
about... Is the other one Kevin Kleinsmith?
They were talking about the other attorney there, that we have their text messages in here, that they were concerned about, along with the other 2.
The other thing that I would ask you to look into, there is growing evidence that 302s were edited and changed. And it gets back to what Ms. Handel said in terms of those particular interview sessions. And those 302s, it is suggested that they were changed to either prosecute or not prosecute individuals, and that is very troubling, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
And if I could just mention, we have been getting those kind of referrals, and as often happens when we issue reports like this, we get other information coming to us, and we're intending to follow up on that.
What we're continuing to find, Buck, is additional information from DOJ and FBI that has literally been hidden from Congress's oversight role for 9 months. And so we're at the point where the frustration has reached a level that we've got to deal with it. So issuing subpoenas to compel people to come in and testify. Some of them who really, I think, want to testify, want to make sure that we clean this up, will be actually forthcoming in days, where we'll get them to come in. And it's all about evidence. It's about making sure that, you, Crystal, and you, Buck, you get the same justice that anybody else that has big dollars or well connection, because, justice should be meted out evenly. And yet we're finding that evidence could have been tampered.
All right, that was Congressman Mark Meadows, the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, in an interview that he did with the Hill. The altering of 302s, I have now been hearing widespread speculation that documents exist that would prove that, and meaning that is the accounts of FBI agents during interviews that they have with witnesses or any other people involved with things. Andy McCarthy at National Review Online has a couple of great columns out about the IG report. The IG report should end Mueller's obstruction investigation. And the Clinton emails, what the IG report refuses to admit. And Andy McCarthy, now a Fox News contributor and a columnist for National Review Online, joins us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Sean. How are you?
I'm good. Now, but before we get to your columns, let's go to what Mark Meadows was asking Michael Horowitz, if these individuals, unidentified FBI lawyers mentioned in the IG report, whether or not they are counterintelligence. And Michael Horowitz saying he's looking into whether 302 forms were edited, and says subpoenas in the Russian probe are forthcoming in days because of the obstruction by the Department of Justice. I want you to weigh in on all those 3 big issues here.
Sean, the way you described this and the way Congressman Meadows does, it makes you think that the historic way the FBI has done its reports, really since the very beginning of the FBI, may have to change. Just so listeners know how this process works, when somebody gets interviewed by the FBI, you have an agent in the room who's taking notes. And I always insisted that it be one agent taking notes, because you don't want even 2 people trying hard to get it right. If they're taking notes of the same event, are going to have slight differences, which creates problems. But what they do is they write notes as the interview takes place, and then they sit down and they type out what's called a 302 report, which is the Bureau's standard report. And it really gives them a chance to tee up what the report brought out in a systematic, coherent way. So in that sense, it's good. But it's also an opportunity for mischief. You know, if you record an interview, you have a kind of an unimpeachable way or recording or showing of how it came out and exactly what the person said, and there's no issues as far as that goes. It creates some legal problems at trial, but you know, the thing is, at least you have something that's recorded that can't be doubted. When they write these reports, and it sounds like they play games with the reports, and then you hear things like, you know, General Flynn, the agents who interview him think that he's telling the truth, and then months later, when the special counsel's lawyers come in, they decide that he's not telling the truth on the basis of the same information. You have to really ask yourself whether this is really the way they ought to be doing their work.
Well, let me just ask a question in regards to that, because yeah, you're right. We're talking about Strzok and Comey both saying that they didn't think that Flynn lied, but in the way things often work, which I kind of have a problem with, and I think we might have a slight disagreement on this, is that, well, when they offer deals to people, I mean, this is a guy now that has had to sell his house. This is the thanks you get for 30 years of service to your country and putting your life on the line for the country. You know, they say, well, you know, you had a business and you had dealings with foreign countries and your son's involved in that business, and we're going to have to investigate your son unless you agree to this. Why do I suspect that that's probably what happened? And that frustrates me, because at that point, there's not a father in America that's not going to dive on the sword and take the hit for his child.
No, me included. And I don't think we have a disagreement on that in this way. I think, having been involved in this for 20 years, in the vast majority of plea bargaining cases, that kind of nonsense doesn't go on, because there's just, you know, these cases are not, you know, there's not sexy defendants. No prosecutor thinks they're going to make their career on some case. And most of the time, the plea bargaining system works fairly well. If it didn't, we don't have enough resources to try all these cases, so the system would break down. The problem is when you get very ambitious prosecutors and very sexy, high-profile defendants, that's where you see these kinds of shenanigans. And power can be abused if you have people who are not fit to wield it, and if they wield it in the way that you've just described, that's an abuse of power, and everybody ought to be able to agree with that.
You know, let me just go a step further with this, because I think the last time you were on this program, I didn't ask you about it, but I agree. You can't try every case. Plea bargaining is part of the process. I don't have a problem with it in any way, because in the end, we probably save taxpayers a lot of money. If you had to go to court on every single solitary case, it would be an impossibility. But I do have a problem sometimes, like, look at Judge Ellis's comments as it relates to Paul Manafort. I mean, they're dredging up a 2005 tax case with the Ukraine, has nothing to do with Russia, and as Judge Ellis said, I mean, I'm sure that case had been resolved. And they just dragged it up for the very purpose of putting the screws to Manafort in the hopes that he would sing, or as the judge said, perhaps compose, which I interpreted to be supporting perjury and basically saying whatever you want to get out of jail free. And now Paul Manafort, and for the purpose of prosecuting or slash impeaching Donald Trump, that's what the judge said. Now Paul Manafort is in solitary confinement. He hasn't been found guilty of anything, and I'm sure that the hope there is that he'll say whatever they want. In my mind, I'm not so sure, knowing the human condition as we know it and people's desire for self-preservation. You know, well, you're facing 30 years in jail unless you say this, and they get led into saying things that they know aren't true. That's a problem.
Yeah. Sean, look, if you're going to have a dishonorable prosecutor, then you have to watch every single move they make on the chessboard. It's not the way they squeeze. It's not just the way they squeeze people who the law gives them the ability to hold prior to trial. It's virtually everything they do. If you're going to play that kind of hardball, and we know that there are people who are involved on Mueller's staff who have that reputation for not only squeezing people in very arbitrary ways, but also holding back on information that ought to be